Well, good evening. This lesson is a little different than the ones that we've had previously. It's on integers, and integers is 3 different sections in your book. So this one video, is going to cover all of sections 1.4, 1.5, 1.6. Another thing that's going to be a little bit unique is we are featuring our own Joshua. Say hi, Josh.
Hi.
And we are going to teach you everything that you need to know about integers. So, strap on your seatbelt. Let's get going. All right, let's start with the definition of what we mean when we say the word integers. So when I say the word integers, Joshua, what do you immediately think of?
Positive and negative numbers.
Sure, we're talking about positive and negative numbers. And the numbers are going to be whole numbers. We're not talking about fractions or decimals. So what I'm talking about are numbers like 0, 1, 2, 3, and we can keep going all the way as high as you can count. But we're also talking about numbers like -1, -2, -3, and so on. So any whole number, positive, negative, or the number 0, that's an integer. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. This is not something you're going to see in your textbook, but later on in mathematics, you're going to use this symbol right here. It's a Z with a double bar in the middle and a little cross, and this means, this is the symbol for integer. Okay, and you might wonder, well, if integer starts with the letter I, why does that symbol use the letter Z? And the reason is the people who did a lot of number theory early on with integers were German mathematicians, and their word for integer starts with a Z. Pretty interesting, eh? Mm-hmm. All right, now let's talk about the absolute value of an integer. Okay, what's the definition of absolute value? It's how far a number is what?
From 0.
Right, it's how far away it is from 0. And so what you might want to think about when you're thinking about absolute value, think about a number line, okay, with 0 in the middle. So if I take a number like 5, that's 5 units over here to the right, it's 5 away from 0. But if I come back here to -5, isn't it also 5 units away from 0? Now the symbol we use for absolute value of x looks like this. It's got vertical bars on either side. And so to practice these, the ones from above, if we do the absolute value of -5, the answer is just 5. If we do the absolute value of 5, the answer is also 5. So for positive numbers, absolute value doesn't really do anything to it. And for negative numbers, what you could think of is that the absolute value just kind of strips off the sign. I can't really read that. Let's fix that. That look better? Okay. So there we go. So that's the idea of absolute value. Now when we talk, as we go forward, we're going to talk about this word value. Again, so the value is just the number part. So the 5 is the value of 5. And also, when I have -5, 5 is the value of that too. So when I say value, I really mean it's really a short cut or an abbreviation for absolute value. Okay? All right, so now we're going to move on to the 3 commandments. And this is really all of 1.5, 1.6. 1.4 is just an introduction to this idea of positive, negative numbers and absolute value. Where it really gets interesting is when we get to the 3 commandments. So we're going to write down thy 3 commandments. Okay? Now the first commandment is that what? Thou shalt not
subtract.
That's right. Thou shalt not subtract. What are you supposed to do instead? I mean, we've got subtraction problems all the time. What are we supposed to do if you're not allowed to subtract?
You add the opposite.
Instead, we're going to add the opposite. Very good. Okay? So this is the first commandment. So instead of subtracting, we're going to change all of our subtraction problems into adding the opposite. And you'll see how that works in just a minute. Okay? So any subtraction problem, we're going to change the subtraction to addition. And the number that came after the subtraction sign, whether it's positive or negative, we're going to change it to its opposite. The second commandment will only be applied once I've changed it to an addition problem. So if I have 2 things and I'm adding them together and they're the same sign, I should find that starts with that same first letter, doesn't it? So if they're the same sign, I should find the
sum.
Excellent. And if they're different signs, I should find the
difference.
Find the difference. Okay? Now sum is basically a fancy name for adding the values together. And difference is a fancy name for really just finding the difference between them, which is really kind of like a subtraction problem. But I'm not subtracting the original integers. For both of the parts of step 2, we're talking about finding the sum or the difference of the values. And the values will never be negative. They're either 0 or positive. Now the third commandment is especially useful for when we have a positive number and a negative number that we're putting together, because they kind of fight against each other, right? It's kind of like a tug of war. And what the third commandment says is when you get all done finding the sum or the difference, to find out what the sign is at the end, we're going to keep the sign of the larger, again, here's that word again, the larger value. Okay, so if you think about that, if you had something like 3 and negative 8, 3 and negative 8 are different signs. So we're going to use this part of the second commandment, right? They're different signs. So 3 and negative 8, the difference would be, say 3 and 8, the difference is?
5.
5. Now, if 3 and negative 8 get added together, which one's got the bigger value, the 3 or the negative 8?
The negative 8.
The negative 8. And since the 8 is the bigger value, it was negative, so we're going to keep that sign. We're going to keep a negative for the answer. That's it. I think we're ready. You think they're ready to try it? Okay, so Joshua and I made up a couple of questions for y'all. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at these problems. We've got 6 problems that we've written out. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to go through, we'll do the first problem for you, and you can follow along, and then after that, we're going to want you to pause the video and try to do the next 5 questions on your own. All right, so we'll help you with the first one. Okay, Joshua, is the first one going to need the first commandment? It's negative 18 plus 11. Is there any subtraction there?
No, there's not.
No, so we don't even need to worry about it. So the very first problem, all I've got to do to do this one is go right to the second commandment. And the second commandment says, if they're the same sign, find their sum. Are they the same sign?
No.
No. They're different signs. So what do I find instead?
You find the difference.
Excellent. And the difference of 18 and 11? How far apart are they?
7.
7, correct. And then the third commandment says to look closely at these numbers and keep the sign of the larger value. 18 and 11, which one has the bigger value?
18.
And it happens to be?
Negative.
So the answer is negative 7. Okay, folks, so that's what you're going to do. Now, for some of these problems, like the third one down, and the one after that, and the one after that, and the one after that, all of those problems start with what?
Now I'll start with a...
They all have a minus in them, don't they? So they are going to need that first commandment. So you know what? It's kind of mean, maybe, to make them do the first commandment without showing them how. So why don't we do one more for them?
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to do the third one down for you. And what you're going to do on the third one down is you're going to start by rewriting the problem. We're not supposed to subtract, are we?
No.
Instead, we're supposed to add the opposite. So you write down your first number, 8. That doesn't change at all. It doesn't matter whether it's positive or negative. Write it down exactly the way it is. This minus sign right here is going to become a positive because we're going to add instead of subtract. And the thing that comes after the minus sign, in this case negative 4, is going to get reversed to its opposite. What's the opposite of negative 4?
4.
So this is really 8 plus 4. And 8 plus 4, that's easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're just adding two things together with the same sign. So we're going to find the sum. They're both positive. In particular, the 8 was positive. So we're going to keep the sign of the larger value, which was positive. So we get positive 12. That's all there is to it. Okay, so we did 2 problems for you. What we'd like you to do now is pause the video. Do the next 4 questions. Do the one in the between, the second one, 8 plus negative 11. Then do the bottom 3 questions. And when you're done with all 4 problems, write these down on actual paper. Don't just do them in your head. Then go ahead and press play on your video and see if your answers on your paper match what we're about to do on the video. Okay? So pause the video right now. Do all 4 of the remaining problems. We'll see you in just a minute, okay? Okay, welcome back. If you didn't do all 4 of the problems that we left blank here, please go ahead and do that right now. Otherwise, we're going to show you what you should have written down on your paper. All right, here we go. The second problem, 8 plus negative 11, Joshua. Do we have to worry about changing subtraction into adding the opposite?
No, we do not.
We do not, because we're already adding. Are they the same sign or different sign?
They're different.
They're different signs, so we're going to find the difference. What's the difference of 8 and 11?
3.
3. Thou shalt keep the sign of the larger value, which in this case is the 11. So it was negative, so we're going to keep a negative 3. That's what you should have got for that problem. The next problem, 5 minus 28. Thou shalt not subtract. What do we have to do to this one instead?
Gotta add the opposite.
So we're going to change it to 5 plus, instead of subtracting a positive 28, we're going to add a negative 28. Now you might not think that that really changes anything, but it does, because now we can use the second commandment. Are those the same sign or different signs?
They're different signs.
They're different signs. So the difference of 28 and 5 is going to be 23. Which one wins the tug of war?
The 28.
The 28 does, and it was negative, so we're going to say negative 23. Thou shalt keep the sign of the larger value. Negative 8 minus 12 is once again a subtraction problem, so we're going to rewrite that as negative 8. That minus sign is going to switch to a plus, and the opposite of 12 is negative 12. All right, so negative 8 minus 12 is the exact same thing as negative 8 plus negative 12. All right, same sign or different signs?
Same.
Finally, we get one that's the same sign. And 8 and 12, what's the sum?
The sum is 20.
20. And they're both negative, so keep the sign of the larger value. Well, obviously, they're both negative. It doesn't matter which one's bigger. We're going to get a negative 20. And the last one, negative 8 minus negative 11. Okay, the negative 8 doesn't change at all, because that's the front number. This minus sign is going to become a plus, because we're not going to subtract. We're going to add the opposite. What's the opposite of negative 18?
18.
Positive 18. Same sign or different signs? Clearly those are different. So the difference of 18 and 8 is 10. And we're going to keep the sign of the larger value, which in this case was the 18, so we get positive 10. And I don't care when you do your work, whether you do circles around your answers or boxes around the answer. Either way, it's fine. Okay, so there you go. That is how you use the 3 commandments to add and subtract integers. You've also learned about absolute value, and you've also learned about the definition of integers. I hope you enjoyed the video. Joshua, I want to thank you for the help. And let's go ahead and take a look at the last slide here. That is the end. You will notice on our board right now, we do have a picture of the 3 commandments, thy 3 commandments, and there they are, 1, 2, and 3. Thou shalt not subtract, instead add the opposite. 2, if we're adding 2 things with the same sign, let's find the sum. If they're different signs, let's find the difference. And finally, 3, thou shalt keep the sign of thy larger value. Thanks for watching our video, and we hope this has made adding and subtracting integers, absolute value, and just the definition of integers that much easier. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Goodbye.